This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. Boy, do we have a great show for you today. WWE has to touch everything. You know we're going to talk about that and what that means. Of course, we've got to take a look at what's going on in AEW with a VP's contract. Looks like we gave you some bad advice last week, so we got to take that back and we got to make some corrections. What does Vince think of Finn Balor? AEW blocking a Bryan Danielson move? And Mustafa Ali, is he in? Is he out? Where's he going? What's going on with him? Of course, we're going to take a look at AEW. We have the return of Jon Moxley. We're going to take a look at Impact, and we've got to talk about WWE. I think they were the hottest news this week, and for all the wrong reasons. Doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc John Macaroon. He's coming to me from his palatial estate in the Macaroon Mansion. I'm assuming you're in your office, sir. How's it going?
I mean, cause who would have thought that filing a trademark for a Nazi name would be a bad idea? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you would think with a company that's worth $1 billion, there would be a certain level of research, and you would think that that kind of error would not be made. But it's 2022, and everybody just does whatever the hell they want. And that's what it is. When you want to just have your hand in everything and you're Vince McMahon and you got to have that trademark, you got to have that change to be an owner, then that's what you get. You reap what you sow. When you mess up to that degree in this day and age, in the age of the internet, you get all the heat. And I think that a lot of the complaints that we're going to have will reflect things that we've talked about in the past. But I will say this. Outside of that, you know, just the whole Nazi thing, I like the name Gunther. I think it kind of signifies strength. It signifies something unique. Now, the entire name is probably disgusting at the highest level, but, you know, Gunther has kind of that badass ring to it. So you're my favorite Gunther. You're my favorite Gunther. I think that's perfect. Adam Gunther, you know, to be honest, if you go on to a career in media, consider it as an inside joke, Adam Gunther. I think
could be my name, yeah, my TV name or my radio name.
Exactly. I think that, you know, just no disrespect to the family, never do that. But Adam Gunther has like that strong edge, and I think, you know, Gunther talk shit on the radio would be amazing. And so I think that's great. And then maybe I'll file a trademark too on Adam Gunther. And, I'll always have a little piece of you.
There you go. Smart business on your part. What the Doc is talking about, if you don't know, on Tuesday night, WWE's NXT 2.0. We've had Walter in WWE now for, I think, about 3 years, maybe a little bit longer. He had a hell of a match on Tuesday night to close out NXT 2.0. And at the very, very end, gets on the microphone and says the winner of this match is Gunther. And you could have heard a pin drop in the NXT 2.0 stadium. Like, it was all the air from this fantastic 12-minute match just got sucked out of the room for WWE to basically come in and put their grubby little mitts all over what is a pretty awesome package when you really look at what Walter is. He is a very simple, simplistic wrestler, right? He's a big dude. He looks mean, black trunks, black boots. That's kind of it. Doesn't say a whole lot when he cuts a promo. He is intimidating as all hell, and he's been with your company. I think this is the problem that a lot of the WWE fans and a lot of people in wrestling are having. He's been with the company now for 3 years. All of a sudden, you're going to go through a name change? It wasn't like he was off TV for months, and then you're bringing him back, and you're repackaging him. No. He went out there and he just changed his name. And this is all because WWE has to own everything. They've got to own the trademark. Walter's his actual name, so they can't own that. And you're seeing a ton of this with a lot of the guys who come up from NXT. You're seeing this a lot with the people who are currently in NXT. There's a reason why when a guy like Karrion Kross who was the hottest thing in NXT, makes it to the main roster. He's now in a gimp outfit, and he looks like he's part of some weird sex club where he's got a strap on that he has to wear, or he's getting plowed by a strap on. So what you're seeing is WWE now do this overcorrection with a lot of NXT talent where everything is getting changed. I've been listening to a lot of Busted Open Radio because I think Bully Ray has a lot of really good insights into how WWE works. And something that he had said, they're doing a lot of this because when they come up from NXT, they don't want to have to make those gimmick changes. They don't want to have to change the wrestler. So what you're seeing in NXT is what you'll be getting when you get to SmackDown or Raw. In my estimation, I think WWE is completely missing the mark here. I think the best product in WWE, if we went back 2 months, we went back 5 months, we went back a year, we went back 3 years. I think the best product, the most consistent product that we had was NXT. NXT was, if you were a wrestling fan, NXT was the WWE product that you tended to gravitate more to, and you tended to make time out of your day to watch. Like me and you watch a lot of wrestling. We get inundated with so much wrestling. It really interferes, I think, with large parts of our life because we got to watch it on Monday. We've stopped watching it on Tuesday because we both hate NXT 2.0. We've got to watch it on Wednesday. We've got to watch it on Friday. And Friday we get the double dip. And then there'll be a pay-per-view on a Saturday, a pay-per-view on a Sunday. And then if we're watching Impact, you got to watch it on the Thursday. So you really don't have a lot of time where you're not watching wrestling. NXT was the one product that you would always find time to watch no matter what. Even if you had to re-watch it because you DVR'd it. You can passively watch Monday Night Raw. You can passively watch SmackDown. You can passively watch those programs and be doing something in the kitchen, be doing something on the couch, be playing with the kids, be working on a project around the house, because nothing ever really changes, at least not quickly. There might be one moment that you can pull from a show and we can bring it here and we can talk about it and we can really get into it. But there's generally not a lot that goes on weekly on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown. NXT was different. NXT always gave you something to talk about, so much so that when we'd put these shows together, we would have 2 or 3 topics from NXT. We'd have to start cutting stuff because the program was just too big, because we try to keep it a little bit condensed for everybody. We would have 1 or 2 topics for Raw or SmackDown, but NXT would have 3. It was like that regularly, and it made doing the show hard because a lot of people, as much as everybody loves NXT, the 2 big shows are Raw and SmackDown, even though they are absolute trash. And for WWE to come in and to be doing these things where they're just changing everything and ruining characters. And like I said, you can go through a laundry list of guys if you really want to that have been absolutely ruined. Like Keith Lee was another guy, Mia Yim, all the guys who were part of that Retribution faction. Like, all those guys came up from NXT and did a lot of really good things in NXT, and then they get to the main roster and it looks like absolute dog shit. And that's what they're doing right now with this NXT 2.0. And to me, it's disgusting. Then you hear a report that WWE is upset with the direction that NXT 2.0 is going and how the fans are reacting to it. Well, it's garbage. I don't know what you wanted from us. Like, I'm not sure what WWE expected, you know?
Absolutely. And here's a funny story to kind of highlight where NXT is at. So I saw that Walter was going to have a match. It was kind of advertised. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can have it on in the background. So in an office, you get to do other stuff. You get to kind of research and look at Twitter and do a bunch of other stuff. So I'm watching the match and I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. And good match, okay. I'm thinking Walter wins and it's all good. And I fire off a simple tweet, simple text in our group chat with Kenny and Adam, and it's real fun. And we just go back and forth and complain and review stuff. And I'm like, oh man,
complaining.
Yeah, I'm like, oh man, that was a great match with Walter. Nothing. I'm like, okay, it looked like it was a good match. It was entertaining. I had no sound on. So I had it low as I was doing other stuff. All of a sudden I get back and I start, then I'm like, wait a minute, they didn't say nothing. Did something happen? Did I totally miss something? And so I go online and I see all the negative reviews. I'm like, what? They changed his name? And all of a sudden Kenny and Adam are like, dude, they just jacked that shit up to the highest of heavens. You disregarded the whole match, which was a decent wrestling match, because everybody was shocked and disappointed that you changed the man's name that you just didn't need to do. So it's kind of a funny story where you think one thing's happening, you're just going about your business going, oh, okay, it's decent. I see somebody. He had a name. He had something that was potentially there, and you messed it up. That's not how. He was
one of the hottest indie stars.
Yeah, exactly. People were excited to see him. And
I remember the first time he worked in WWE. We were like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is amazing. And then when he gets pulled over to NXT, he ended up leaving the NXT UK to come work solely at NXT, and you scrapped his name. You basically, like, the thing is, like I said, he's a simple character. There's not a ton of depth there, which is fine, but his name was part of the depth that he did have. And you ripped that away from him for no good reason. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you look at it, and then to come out and say we're disappointed in the reaction, people just in this day and age don't blindly support something that isn't quality. And now you're in a position where the narrative is NXT stars get called up to the main roster and their careers die. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that. Eventually speaking, you just devalue the brand. And when you make changes that the fans don't like, then in this day and age, social media has a strong influence. You have a good handful of 6 nationally syndicated wrestling shows, podcasts that are huge that all complain, and they influence things. And when people come out in droves and say, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, it reverberates. And you just can't do that as a company. NXT has been devalued. The color scheme from the beginning is terrible. Dude, NXT was not bright yellow circus rainbow bullshit. It was hardcore wrestling, storytelling, Triple H's vision, Shawn Michaels infused William Regal personality, psychology with all the influencers and the trainers that they had. For what they did, it quickly went to the toilet. And people just turn it off. There's so many options, bro. You literally sometimes only have maybe 4 minutes to impress somebody. And if somebody was impressed with Walter, they got excited, they sat down to watch it, they go, okay, and all of a sudden they're like, Gunther Starks. They're like, right away, a good segment of people are like, dude, that's an offensive thing. And you trademarked it. And then it just right away, within moments, once that starts hitting social media, there's going to be 200 articles with that narrative instead of, hey, this is NXT, this is what we're doing. All that filled the airwaves from NXT this week was the stupid decision WWE made. And that's something that you just can't do.
Yeah. And like you said, to go about it where you are trademarking a former Nazi general. Like,
oh my God.
Here's the thing. Nobody really knows who Gunther Stark is, right? It wasn't like it was Adolf Hitler was the name change. But the fact that you have a research team, you've got millions of dollars and you've got millions of people working for you, doing a lot of digging, a lot of cultivating, a lot of idea, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of think tank work. And this is what you come up with?
Right.
This is the direction you go. This is what you choose to put your trademark and your WWE stamp on.
Yeah, my WWE sources that come and tell me Mustafa Ali just got pissed because he had a meeting with Vince and Vince pitched him Adolf Anderson and he was like, I absolutely not. He goes, what? I can see it. I can see something awesome with this. You have a tie with something crazy. The Anderson name is great. Adolf will make you. He's like, I'm not even German.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding there. But the idea is, to that degree, you could understand why wrestlers get pissed because the shit that's getting pitched is terrible, you know? And Gunther is just stupid. You could have just left it as Walter, add something cool, you know? Walter Anderson. Hell, you could have did that, you know? Something that you could trademark with 2 names, you know? So it's you know, a fine. Cause look, at the very basic level, what stupid shit would WWE do? They'd use cities. Walter Berlin. It took me 4 seconds in my brain. Walter Berlin. You can't trademark that? Dude, that sounds actually kind of cool. Walter Berlin. It has a strong name, references country, and then if you want to chop off Walter, then he can just go by, Berlin. Come on, this doesn't take rocket science. So, and that's what WWE's doing, and you pissed off a lot of fans, and they got a lot of work to do to get them back.
They tend to find a way to make something very, very simple incredibly difficult, and they make it really unbelievable. I think this is where AEW and I think Impact for a really good part of their program. I think this is where they really help sell you on their product. And WWE has lost a lot of fans. AEW and Impact is a little bit more grounded. It's a little bit more real. It's at the very root. Wrestling is this. You have something I want, or I have a problem with you. This is why. Let's fight. That is all wrestling is. You build a storyline around that. That is what you go back through history. That is what every storyline is basically about. You have something I want, or I don't like you. Now we must fight. And whoever wins the battles is the winner and gets to move on to somebody else that they don't like or has something that they want. That is what wrestling is. And it is at its core incredibly simple. Yet WWE likes to overcomplicate everything. And what happens is it really suspends your disbelief. Like we're at this point now where almost everybody who watches wrestling is incredibly intelligent. They are up on everything. There is so much information that you can get. It's not like back in the 1980s, early 90s where all you had were some dirt sheets that you could get your hands on once in a while. You knew a buddy who was part of the Wrestling Observer, and he had basically a printout on a dot matrix printer, and he was like, here you go, this is what's coming in. And you could see that, I don't know, once every 2 weeks. It's different now. We are constantly, for this show, perusing everything. And we are inundated with so much, like YouTube, podcast, you've got Bleacher Report, you got Wrestle Talk, and those are just two really generic sites. There are much more in-depth sites that have much more deeper sources that we are looking at to garner information so we can talk about it here.
Yeah, and real quickly,
wrestling fans are incredibly smart, so when you try to overcomplicate it, it pulls you away from that suspended disbelief where we all know that these matches are predetermined. We all know what's going to kind of be happening. That's why we can predict who's showing up at what shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And a quick plug, Sports Illustrated and Justin Barrasso does a great job with insight.
Fantastic job.
A lot of interviews, a lot of great insight. So absolutely, there's so much wrestling content that is available out there to consume. And nowadays, the WWE universe is unforgiving. And I think that's just where it is that they've locked into the kids market, the younger market. The hardcore wrestling fan right now is turning their attention to Impact and to AEW. And
I want to get your take real quick on something. So this is something that I heard earlier this week. We've talked about WWE trying to position itself, and this is not on our rundown, but I want to talk to you about this because I just remembered this. Somehow I forgot to put this on our sheet. But WWE, for a while, it has felt like they are positioning themselves to be sold. Forever and a day, we thought the succession plan would go from Vince to either Shane or Triple H or Stephanie. No more. It really feels like they have positioned themselves to sell themselves and possibly sell themselves and sell their network to Disney. If you think about it, they don't do any blood matches anymore. They had a press conference, I think it was earlier last week, where they basically said we're no more blood and guts. They've even condemned AEW for being a blood and guts and gore show, which is not. If you want to see blood, guts, and gore, you would watch old school ECW. That was blood, guts, and gore. They have leaned so heavily into the family aspect, into the child aspect. I mean, they've got dolls. They've got clothes. They've got all these things for kids now. Could you see WWE and Disney possibly having a partnership where WWE ends up selling its stake to Disney and WWE now becomes a Disney-ran product? Because I'll tell you this much. If this is what we're going to continue to get from WWE, I find WWE very hard to watch. I hate watching WWE, I'll be honest with you. I only do it for this show. If it was up to me, Impact, AEW, that would be about it. I'd maybe watch one or two of WWE's pay-per-views because those are the big events, and I would keep abreast of what's going on from a distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
WWE sells to Disney. I think it becomes a much more kid-friendly show, and I'm out. I'm out.
If they sell, look, there's still characters that you're invested in. You want to see what Sami Zayn does, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar. But yeah, overall, if it just is tailored to that way where it's a little bit more like that, I mean, it's been that way. I mean, what more can they do? I think that what's happening is that eventually speaking, someone will make the decision. If ratings go down, the market will dictate it. You know, obviously, if that's the case and they're getting positioned to be sold, they're doing the right thing for them in regards to maximizing the sale value. But in my opinion, when you look at the product, it is not as edgy. It's not, and also too, outside of edge and blood and all that stuff, it's not as creatively rewarding. You get storylines that kind of just happen and then there's no real lasting impact other than, you know, kind of a fleeting moment here or there. It's like you said, and really we started talking about this 2 years ago, when Vince made the decision to no longer let there be true superstars, when he kind of said, hey, I'm going to cap it to where everybody's kind of the same. Then you know what's going to happen. I mean, you're not going to get a Rock level superstar anymore. You know, Roman Reigns is probably the best that you're going to get, and Brock Lesnar, but that's it. Few and far between. And everybody else, I think, potentially speaking, WWE will no longer maybe be the landing place. It'll be just a feeding ground to AEW if they continue to grow and do things right. And that's just where it is that they're doing things for business. And in terms of fan engagement and audience right now, WWE has a couple angles that people are invested in, but by and large, it's not good enough. And it's disappointing.
Absolutely. It's definitely disappointing. Something that was disappointing, I felt like Raw was disappointing. I felt like SmackDown overall was disappointing. For me, if you're looking for a positive this week from WWE, I think what Seth Rollins did on SmackDown was incredibly entertaining. I found it almost captivating. I thought Seth Rollins' character, where it was really annoying on Monday Night Raw, I found it to be exhilarating on SmackDown. I thought he did a fantastic job interrupting Roman Reigns' promo to open the show, basically setting up a match, bringing Kevin Owens into this match against the Usos, dropping Jon Moxley's name on SmackDown, and it wasn't Dean Ambrose. It was Mox. So Jon Moxley now exists in the WWE universe, which I think is fantastic. I thought him dropping Jon Moxley's name was kind of a tip of the cap. We talk about the smart wrestling fan. We talk about the wrestling fan who's up on everything and watches everything. Jon Moxley had a fantastic return this week. Fantastic return. We're going to talk about his promo. We're going to talk about his match on Rampage when we get to AEW. And for Seth Rollins, you got to remember, all these guys are still boys. These are all friends still. Jon Moxley went to a really hard, difficult place in his life. Returns, looks better than ever, and Seth Rollins gives him a tip of the cap on SmackDown. What did you think about that?
Absolutely. You acknowledge the Shield. It was there, and I think that's cool. And I think, obviously, smart wrestling fans are liking the kind of forbidden door talk, the crossover, the mentioning others. But look, bottom line, they're all boys. They've recognized that this secrecy is stupid at the highest level because Moxley was part of the Shield. He was a big part of the Shield, and it was something to drop, and I think that it's fine. I think that, you know, it just goes to show you certain wrestlers can do it. Seth Rollins is somebody that is worthy of being allowed to kind of have a little bit of leeway, and I'm actually intrigued. I want to see Seth Rollins taking on Roman Reigns, but it stinks because you just, you know, you don't want to see Seth Rollins, you know, take the loss, but it'll be a great match, and it'll be potentially something that will be a fun story in another chapter in the Shield's history. It's kind of a way of tying it all together where, hey, remember, it was Seth Rollins who was the first member of the Shield to kind of turn. And so to bring it back in terms of long-term storytelling, I'm okay with it. And I want to see how it plays out. I thought it was cool to hear Moxley show up on WWE, and the internet reacts with a buzz, so that's cool.
See, I think what you just said there is really, really important. I think it gets lost a little bit. This job that Seth Rollins is doing right now, where he's almost like he's a borderline character, right? He's borderline schizophrenic, it feels like, because he talked about Jon Moxley and he talked about Roman Reigns being, or Seth Rollins and Jon Moxley being props for Roman Reigns in his promo. where if you go back and you've paid attention over the years, Roman Reigns and Jon Moxley were props for Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was the first one to turn. Seth Rollins was the one who was the one that was pushed. Seth Rollins was the one that was protected. Roman Reigns, over the course, developed into that guy who was protected and then pushed. But Seth Rollins was the hand-picked, chosen one from the Shield. And he was the one that was protected. So it's weird because you have Seth Rollins narrating and telling you this story where he's totally removed from it, and in place you have Roman Reigns basically as him. It is, I think it's a really great, interesting job of psychology, and it borders on Seth Rollins almost being a mental patient. Like, his reality is distorted a little bit. I think it's a really fantastic job. You got to pay attention to it. I think if you go back and you just kind of watch how things have unfolded a little bit, he comes across as this crazed, maniacal character, and I think it works for what they're trying to do, and I find it to be really, really interesting. I think this incarnation of Seth Rollins is probably one of the more interesting incarnations of Seth Rollins, even though it borders on madness. I think it's fantastic. It is the highlight from WWE for me this week. I want to get your review of Impact. What happened in Impact that has you buzzing, that has you talking? What did you like?
Because it's been really great. People were disappointed when they heard the news that Ring of Honor was going to be shut down and no longer doing shows in the traditional way. But what has happened is there's been some crossover. There's been an opportunity for Ring of Honor stars to transition over to AEW into Impact. And a great testament to Ring of Honor was seeing Jonathan Gresham taking on Steve Macklin. I thought that featuring the Ring of Honor championship on the line on Impact was awesome. I thought the match was great. I thought that Gresham retaining was the right move, and you could really get a sense that, hey, even on a bigger scale, Gresham is a professional wrestler, and he's somebody that is really, is somebody to be taken seriously. And then you got the presence of Matt Taven, Maria Kanellis, and Mike Bennett. And it's just really cool in regards to how they can tie in angles from Ring of Honor into Impact. And I like that. I like that they're going to continue that name and continue that kind of crossover effect. You're seeing continued on Impact. You're seeing the continued growth of William Morrissey. And now Morrissey's a babyface. He played it up, and I really liked it. I really thought that, where he's moving and his trajectory has been a smooth situation. And really, if the next couple of years are at Impact and he develops his character, develops his in-ring work, gets over, man, what an opportunity for him. But the highlight of this week's Impact was Charlie Haas taking on Josh Alexander. Charlie Haas, even though he's not the same guy as we've known him to be, he still has juice left in the tank. And it was a great match. It was well told. And it was something where you got an opportunity to see Alexander get the win. But Haas looked great. Most people didn't think he would look like that after the way it is. So the feud is continuing. It has a lot of layers potentially to it. But I like the opportunity to see wrestlers that maybe have been overlooked. And even after 15 years or so, and you have an opportunity to get featured, and the experience level, the opportunity to work with somebody else is awesome. And to play into the whole Ring of Honor invasion, I thought was good. So overall, B+ show, very entertaining. I thought that, Joe Deering and Doc Gallows versus Rhino and Heath was fun. I thought the women's match was entertaining. It was well paced. The show was worth it to watch, and it's picking up steam. I think Impact is firmly in place with good storytelling, doing what they need to do, and there are some characters in there that you can get invested in. They're not making as many mistakes as other companies that we've talked about tend to make at this point. So they're doing good stuff. Opened with Tasha Steelz and Chelsea Green, which I thought was entertaining as well. So, in good situations, you have opportunities to check into a company that maybe is not as well known. That's why we talk about it. But B+ show, I thought it was good. And then they're working their way through their angles, and they're developing stars that people care about and are invested in. And it is what it is. If you have realistic expectations for what you're seeing production-wise and what you're seeing, Impact is a show that you can watch and be invested in and have a good time with.
it's like you said, it's realistic. It's a little bit more gritty. It's a little bit more raw. It's not as polished as WWE. Definitely not as polished as what you get with AEW. But it's a good show, and they tell good stories, and you get to see a lot of really, really good wrestling. Impact is always a great choice. I'm so happy that Impact is in the position that it's in, because forever and a day, I love TNA. I loved when it was Impact before it was its current incarnation of Impact, and when it went through its basically its selling and changing of hands, there was a lot of nerves, and there was a lot of nervousness around what's going to happen to this wrestling organization, and I'm glad that it's in a healthy spot. So really, really good. Speaking of being in a healthy spot, Jon Moxley returned to AEW this week after taking some time away to do an inpatient stint for alcohol abuse. Man, he looked great. Like, physically, this guy looked about 10 years younger, and he looked like he was about 15 pounds lighter. He looked so damn good. Watching him come through the crowd to make his way to the ring with his normal entrance, you just looked at him and you're like, he's back. Like, he's back. He looks like he is healthy, looks like he is in a good place. His promo was absolutely fantastic. It was on the verge of being perfect. You had one fan in the stands who basically said, get this piece of trash out of here. Jon Moxley turned around and basically told him to go fuck himself and had him removed from the stadium. I thought that was great. I thought this promo by Jon Moxley, it was real. It was inviting. He brought you into kind of what's been going on with him, brought you into some of his pain. And he let you know, like, I'm in a good place, and I'm back, and I'm better than ever, and I'm here to fuck shit up, and I'm here to tear the house down. And I thought his promo was absolutely fantastic, had you on the edge of your seat. And I thought his match on Friday, which we'll talk about in a minute, was kind of the coronation. It was almost like it was a 2-day event for Jon Moxley to come back. What did you make of Jon Moxley's promo?
Yeah, it was great. I thought it was very energetic. I thought that it was nice to see somebody come back. And you realize, wow, October hit, and the wrestling world is so fast-paced that 6 weeks can fly by. 6 to 8 weeks can quickly fly by, and to get him back is great because he's a superstar and somebody that deserves to be in quality angles. He's just part of the show, and there was something missing without him there. Welcome back, Moxley. Stay on his path. And definitely take care of business and get into some things that will reward your career. And it's just tough because the wrestling business is not an easy business on your mental health, not an easy business on your sobriety, especially because you have so much free time. You know, it's just inherent that there's a struggle because how do you come down from that? Dude, sometimes you watch a wrestling show, you're so amped that it's hard to come down. So what do the boys do? They drink and sometimes try to do some things to party. And unfortunately, there's a lot of young cats too at AEW. So you got to transition more into the family life, more like a business. Handle your business, go home, watch some wrestling, learn the craft, continue to learn visually. Hey, hit up Seth Rollins, do some things, hit up your wife, do some things. You got to handle your business and avoid the bottle. And I hope he does. But yeah, I would not be surprised if there's another slip up down the road. It's a tough business, man. And you know, we kid around with the Usos. The Usos, you know, one of the brothers has like 3-4 DUIs, one here in Metro Detroit. So it's just a tough grind. And so we just take it for 1 week at a time. And I'm just praying for more of his mental health as opposed to the performer. And the performer thing will take care of itself. I just hope his lifestyle is conducive to something that can keep him healthy for a long period of time.
You said something there that I think is really important. And I come from a long history of alcoholics. My grandpa used to run a bar, and my grandpa was an alcoholic. And there were points where my grandpa was clean. Everything was good. And he was put together. And there were times where I would go into the bar in the morning and he looked like he had just been living there for about a week and then possibly making it to an underpass or an overpass and live there for about another week. So it's one of those things where it's a constant struggle. You fall off, you get back on, you fall off, you get back on. The goal is to have a support system around you that when you start to slip, you can turn to them and you feel safe and it'll help you get back on. So as long as he keeps that going, and it sounds like now everybody in the locker room knows the deal. So as long as everybody in the locker room has your back, you'll be good, and you just have to keep on going. You got to make those hard decisions. You got to make that hard call. Like, I'm not doing that today. I don't feel like it. Or know yourself. If you're going to be put in a spot where you might slip up, you got to pull yourself back. He probably will slip up, but the hope is that he's got a good enough support system to help keep him on the straight and narrow. I thought his return match, I thought he looked great. I thought it told a really good story. I thought the way he looked in the ring after being off for so much time, I don't think he missed a beat. I thought it was a good match on AEW Rampage. And last week I condemned AEW Rampage. And this week you got a live version of AEW Rampage from Washington, D.C. And I thought Jon Moxley stole the show. He opened the show, he stole the show, and I thought it was great. What did you make of his return match?
I love Ethan Page. I thought that was a great opportunity. Too. I love his work ethic. I thought that he's got a great gimmick working, and I enjoyed it. You know, I thought the match was great. I felt like it was definitely the highlight of the show, and it's something good to put Moxley on Rampage. Holy crap, it's a highlight. And again, you can really see the influence and the impact of a crowd. The crowd was into it, so it makes it so that it's a little bit easier to be into it. So I was greatly impressed. It was fun to see, and of course Moxley goes over, but, and you'll tease it in the news and notes, potentially we're getting a feud that could be very, very rewarding in the future. So I can't wait to hear it in the news and notes. But AEW's on the right path in regards to the way in which they weave in and out of angles, I think is great. But I see here that you're impressed with Cody Rhodes. Something that he did in his promo or something that he's been doing has caught your attention. I'm curious. What has impressed you with the what has impressed you with Cody Rhodes and the manner in which he's conducting himself?
So we have bagged on Cody Rhodes in the past because he kind of feels like we're not really sure what we're getting with this character. In my estimation, I think Cody Rhodes is severely underrated. I think his talent and who he is as a performer, as a wrestler, is severely underrated. If you go back to when AEW first started, we both agreed Cody Rhodes was the face of AEW. I mean, it was the Young Bucks who were part of it, but Cody Rhodes was the guy who was giving you the 5-star matches.
Oh, real quickly, it is. It's American Nightmare Cody Rhodes and American Dragon Bryan Danielson. So,
right.
Too much American up in that.
There's a lot of American going on in AEW.
A lot of American.
The A in AEW should be American. American Elite Wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. I can tie a Nightmare to that god awful tattoo that just sticks out.
Yeah,
it was the worst thing he could ever do. I was so hoping it was fake, but whatever.
It's a bad tattoo.
Yeah, it's horrible.
But you go back to the early days of AEW. He was the one who was tearing the house down. I mean, you go back to the brother versus brother match where him and Dustin tore it up. That match was incredible. It brought a tear to your eye because there was real emotion in that match, and the way they built it was awesome. And you fast forward, and he's had a couple of clunkers in the middle of all of this. You know, the Anthony Ogogo thing. He said he wished he never would have did it. It was bad. It was bad all the way around. But from that, you have this guy who, for weeks now, has been getting months now. It's been months, I think. He's been getting booed by the fans. The fans aren't sure what they want to do with him. They half want to turn on him, half want to cheer him. He takes his belt off, throws it into the crowd. That should be a souvenir for somebody. They're throwing it back at him. Like, that tells you where he's at with the fan base. The fan base has basically turned its back on the guy who has helped set AEW on the map. He was the guy who had essentially the vision of AEW when Dave Meltzer said nobody else would ever sell out a 15,000 seat arena. Cody Rhodes was the guy who said, I'll take that challenge, and built AEW, built their first pay-per-view, which was fantastic. It was great. And he did it all. I don't want to say he did it all by himself, but he did it all basically with not a multi-billion-dollar machine like the WWE had behind it. All from the ground up. Now Cody Rhodes, working with no contract, which we'll talk about in the news and notes. I gave you some bad information last week. My bad. My sources were wrong. Working without a contract, he seems almost like he's a bit of a tweener. Comes on and talks and puts over CM Punk in one respect, but then shits all over CM Punk and says, I was the guy who started this wrestling revolution. It was me. I'm this guy. I'm that deal. If you want to cheer anybody, you cheer me. This is why I don't turn heel. I am the man. I loved it. It came across, again, as a little bit of this tweener. He's got a foot in the babyface world. He's got a foot in the heel world. And you're just like, this is awesome. And it got you juiced. It had mojo to it. Like that, watching that promo, it gave you some chills. And when you were done, you were like, man, can I watch that again? Because he delivered so well, and he connected with everybody in that audience. That audience was booing him at one point, and at the very end of it, they were cheering him. That right there, my friend, is great work. It's great psychology. He is doing a fantastic job with this character. None of us know what the hell this character is. None of us know what's going on with this character. He doesn't even have a contract in AEW right now, yet he's showing up, and he is continuing to build and deliver on this vision that he has for whatever this version of Cody Rhodes is going to be. And I can't wait to see it. I think he is severely underrated. I think what happens is you have guys like CM Punk come into AEW. You have a guy like Jon Moxley return. And I feel like Jon Moxley is the attitude of AEW. Jon Moxley is that he is the pulse of AEW. He's gruff. He's in your face. He's aggressive. He takes no prisoners and doesn't apologize. That is AEW. But Cody Rhodes is the heartbeat, and Cody Rhodes is the backbone of what AEW is. And I think a lot of people forget that, and a lot of people shit on Cody Rhodes when they really should be looking at him with a more favorable light. And I thought this promo was absolutely fantastic. I know you enjoyed the promo, maybe not as much as me. What was your take on him coming out and just basically laying bars down?
Yeah, it was a good promo. I thought it was intriguing, and I thought that it was delivered in a great way. Now, remember that he challenged Sammy Guevara to a ladder match, in essence, 2 titles and hang it up there. And I think that, bottom line, there's a great way to look at promos is, do you get people talking? Do you bring people in, and do people still care? And what it is that you recognize, okay, it's going to be Cody Rhodes and Sammy Guevara, and a great opportunity to have a match. And basically Cody Rhodes saying, hey, I know there's a lot of talk about the historians of wrestling, but hey, I want my kudos, I want my flowers for some of the things that I've done. And I think that, eventually speaking, you kind of want to see Cody kind of move up the ladder a little bit. Him being the TNT champion is a little bit weird. You know what I mean? It's like you need a version of an Intercontinental belt, and right now the TNT and TBS belts are more in line with what a television title is. So a television title would go on someone like Andrade, Andalito, or whatever his name is, and things like that, or someone a little bit lower on the card.
Doesn't it feel like Andrade, I'm speaking of, isn't in a place where you thought he would be?
I like the gimmick, but I think that he's firmly in the mid card and a notch below, where I thought maybe he could be a lot more of a featured thing. But they're taking it slow with him. They're building out a character, and it's intriguing now in regards to working with Matt Hardy, and that's just a great thing to do, is to bridge the gap with a bunch of young, talented wrestlers and moving forward with the experienced vets. But yeah, I would have expected a lot more. The gimmick that I guess I'm waiting to see what's next is Malachi Black. I think it's good, but it needs a little bit of something a little bit more to keep it moving. It's like you're getting a little bit with each week lost in the shuffle in regards to what you're doing there. And it's just a product of wrestling and attention spans. But I think with Cody Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, I'm looking forward to the match. The promo was fire. And I think that's what you got to keep doing week in and week out. So I'm curious to see what this teaser is you said about Cody in the news and notes. Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made Gunther's list?
All right, so some big time wrestling news announced Tuesday. Big Time Wrestling said that the Hardy Boys will reunite for their March 12th show in Webster, Massachusetts. As part of the announcement, Big Time Wrestling noted that it'll be the first time that Matt and Jeff Hardy have wrestled as a team in nearly 3 years. You realize that it's been 3 years since we've had the Hardy Boys. The Hardys last team on April 9th, 2019 episode of SmackDown, where they beat the Usos to win the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Jeff ended up suffering a knee injury, so they had to relinquish the titles. Now, WWE has reportedly had interest in signing former ROH Women's Champion Roxy after recently bringing her in for a tryout. According to Fightful, Roxy performed well at the tryout, and there is a significant push within WWE to sign her even before the tryout occurred. Now, Roxy's like 20 years old, and she seems like she's a bit of a wrestling prodigy. Just recently dropped the ROH title to Deanna Purrazzo on Impact last week. It was a fantastic wrestling match. Absolutely. I suggest you go check it out. Her tryout occurred in December, which was after Ring of Honor announced that they were basically releasing all of their contracted talents in anticipation of their reboot in 2022. Now, we do need to discuss that erroneous report that I gave last week on AEW's executive. Cody Rhodes, one of the executive vice presidents of All Elite Wrestling, is currently the TNT champion of the promotion, or one of the TNT champions of the promotion. We've got two. It's really, really weird. Welcome to wrestling. Per Fightful Select, Rhodes is actually technically a free agent and has been working without an AEW contract for the past several weeks. Cody's contract expired at the end of 2021, with sources in AEW saying that they have known about this for several weeks. Now, him being a free agent could lend to the Forbidden Door talk about him possibly showing up at the Royal Rumble, which is taking place next, was it 2 weeks? Or next week? Next week, right? Next week. So you've got that going on. It could be him taking more time away to do things with the Go Big show that he's a part of on TBS, or it could just be him working this into a storyline. So we've got to wait and see. Last week I told you he had a contract done. This week I'm telling you he doesn't. There's a lot of mysterious stuff going on with Cody Rhodes right now. Now, rumor is Vince has zero interest in Finn Balor, which is sad. According to a report from an unnamed person, WrestlingNews.co source within WWE states that Vince McMahon has put the brakes on any significant push for Finn Balor, saying, yeah, Finn was moved into the spot that Jeff Hardy had. He's just there now to help get younger guys over. The pitch was to make him a heel, but that was weeks ago, and I haven't heard much about it since then. Vince never really saw Finn as more than just a mid-card guy. Heyman would have pushed him to the moon, but Vince never saw it. Finn Balor previously saw a return to NXT in 2020, including holding the NXT Championship for 212 days before dropping it to Karrion Kross. Sounds like there will be no movement for Finn Balor. Like, if Finn Balor wants to leave WWE, they will hold on to him and they will force him to work his contract. They do not want him going to AEW because they believe he may be an asset to AEW. Yeah, well, duh. The whole Bullet Club's over there. So why not get the original OG Bullet Club leader and put him over there? I don't know. I think it'd be pretty freaking great. Just saying. Now AEW is blocking Bryan Danielson from working in PWG. Tony Khan doesn't want Danielson to work in a territory that AEW has yet to visit. If you're an AEW fan here in Michigan, AEW hasn't been here. Haven't been here. Kind of sucks. It really does suck. So Tony Khan in AEW for the most part, primarily working in the Florida area, Georgia, basically if you're a football fan, if you're a college football fan, like the SEC markets, and some of the Big 12 markets. Not really getting any love up here in the Midwest. Tony Khan doesn't want Danielson to work in a territory that AEW hasn't yet to visit. Dave Meltzer, Figure 4 Online, noted that while AEW is not opposed to Danielson working in new markets around the world, they would like Bryan's first match in this particular market to be in an AEW ring. So if you're waiting for AEW to visit the Detroit area, keep waiting. Don't know what it means. Don't know when it's going to happen. I think you can see an example of this. The best example of this would be with Jon Moxley appearing this week. He's got a deal set with GCW, and that is coming up. I believe it's actually this weekend. I think it's tomorrow. It's the 23rd. So AEW wanted Jon Moxley back before he appeared in GCW. So they basically forced the hand and brought him in on the 19th show as well as on the 21st. So Mustafa Ali. John did a little tease with what's going on with Mustafa Ali. A little bit more background on what's taking place with Mustafa Ali. Last week on Sunday, Mustafa Ali took to Twitter to ask for his release from WWE in a very public way. Now, the report is there was a very heated argument with Vince McMahon where they were going back and forth about a creative idea. Vince proposed this idea after giving the go-ahead on an idea that Ali had pitched and wanted to make a change, and it sounds like it ran completely counter to everything that Ali feels and Ali believes in. Ali, it sounds like, is trying to do something a little bit more broad-based, a little bit bigger, that's going to resonate on a completely different level. It sounds like it's a little bit more political, and it sounds like it may be something to help his ethnicity. Did I say that right? I don't know. Help me out. Sounds like he's looking to really push something towards helping Arab Americans is what it really sounds like. And Vince wanted him to do something that ran totally counter, almost like, do you remember when the Twin Towers fell and then they had all the guys dressed up in black and they were like the terrorists? You remember that whole thing and how awful and distasteful that was? Sounds like it was along those lines. And Mustafa Ali was basically like, yo, Vince, go fuck yourself. And after that, asked for his release. He has not been seen on TV in quite some time. Took some time off for paternity leave. And all he wanted was to miss one show for the birth of his child. And he's basically just been sat either in the back in catering or not been brought to any shows. So sounds like it's a bit rough. WWE will not release him. WWE has rejected his request for his release. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Mustafa Ali. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes, my man.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast anywhere. And I mean anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Make sure you type in Detroit Sports Podcast and hit that subscribe button, and our daily content will find you. We break down all things Lions, Wings, Pistons, Tigers, professional wrestling. Have a Michigan podcast that is dedicated to the Jim Harbaugh watch and what the hell's been going on with Michigan's head coach. So we enjoy breaking down all things professional wrestling every single weekend, and I can't wait to see how the Royal Rumble shakes out, all the go-home shows this week. It's going to be a fun time, so don't miss out. Hit us up on Twitter at Detroit Podcast if you've heard anything that you've liked or disliked. 'Cause podcasting time is over. I can't wait to break down the Royal Rumble with you next week. It's going to be a fun time.